Hello everyone and welcome to We Meet at Digital Days. My name is Marie-Therese Kohl and I will moderate this presentation. We are very pleased that you took the time to participate in our virtual conference. The topic of this presentation is Introduction to Circular Connectors Range at Würth Elektronik. Our speaker is Caroline Poulard. She will hold a presentation and will answer your questions. But before we start, I would like to point out one thing. You will be muted during this presentation. This means that you cannot ask questions via microphone during the presentation. Nevertheless, you have the opportunity to ask questions during the presentation at any time via the chat function. And you can find the chat function in the webinar control panel. This presentation will be about 30 minutes long. The chat questions will be answered in a Q&A session following the webinar. And there are 5 to 10 minutes in addition scheduled for this. If we are unable to answer all of your questions within this time, we will answer them via email afterwards. And if you still have any other questions left, just mail us at exhibition@we-online.com and we will try to answer all of your questions promptly. At the end of the presentation, you will be asked to participate in a feedback survey. We would be pleased if you take the time to fill out the survey and help us to improve our event. You will also receive the link to the presentation in the next few days. And also the recording will be available at our website shortly. But now I will hand over to our speaker, Caroline, and I wish you an exciting presentation.
Hello, everyone. So today I will present you, as Marie-Therese said, thank you, the range of circular connectors that we have here launching this year at Würth Elektronik. This is really a short presentation. We have only 30 minutes, so I will introduce you firstly really to the basics of those connectors. What is the genesis of it, where you can find them, what they're used for. Then going a bit deeper into the technology of circular connectors before talking to you about really the core of this presentation, let's say, the range that we will launch this year, the product range that we will have, the different type of connector that will be available, and so on, before having a technical focus on several points. Mostly it will be the main characteristic of this connector that are the IP rating, but also some focus on how to mount them properly, what is important, and some tiny points also on the materials. As Marie-Therese said, you can ask your question all along, and I will answer them as much as I can at the end of the presentation. So let's go. All right, first thing first, the basics. Okay, what is, let's say, the genesis of circular connectors? What are the basics of it? So circular connectors, they're answering several needs that you may encounter on the field. So first, circular connector, it's in the name, they have this round shape. So it helps having a better contact density. For example, also, sometimes we have pinnators also at Würth Elektronik, and if you have a polarity 40, you have like really thin but really long connector. So having this circular shape helps you to have a contact density, better contact density, and have taking less space with a higher pin numbers. Second point that is really important also, and that is one of the characteristics of these connectors, is that they're working in harsh environments. So they are compliant in high IP standards, IP 65 to 68, sometimes less, but usually it's this type of IP. We'll come back to at the end of the presentation on what does it mean, but what you have to keep in mind is that they're made to work with vibrations, with dust, with water, with sometimes heat or cold. And last but not least, they are circular, as we said, so it also helps for the locking system, having having a screw-in locking system or bayonet or whatever. We'll see that also. But what is important, as they're working in a harsh environment, you need to have a steady locking in a locking system. If you have vibrations, if you have, I don't know, you're in a machine, in a plant, you have a cable that is moving and so on. That's why it's important to have this. And last point, it's the coding to be sure that you will be able to mate your connector correctly. So circular connector are basically the perfect connector, the perfect combination to face these three issues, which are space, working in a harsh environment, and having a steady locking. That's the basics. Then, in general, what can we use circular connectors for? There is basically circular connectors for all the type of application that we can find. It's not, for example, TBL. It will be a bit complicated to use TBL for data, or even, I don't know, FPCs for power. And for circular connector, thanks to coding and their different size, we'll see that also. You can use them for a bit of everything, let's say, for analogic signal transmission, to power electrical devices, and also for data, so higher speed and digital signal. Where can you find them? So originally they were designed for military applications, but no, you can find circular a bit everywhere, not everywhere, but a lot in the industry. So industrial automation, this is really where you will find a lot of circular connectors, especially the one that we will be launching this year. Communication also, the energy and renewable energy, especially as when you're working outside. This connector are specialized to work in harsh environments, so it helps. Also security and surveillance technology, machine manufacturing, again, when you're in industry, you have vibration, you have movement, and so on. And last also, maybe a bit minor, but also in LED lighting. Also, nowadays more and more you can find it in mobility, like such as on like e-bikes or e-trolleys, stuff like this. So you can find them a bit of everywhere, but this is mostly not for consumer goods. That was the basics of the basics. Now we're gonna focus a bit more on the circular connectors technology, going deeper and deeper into this technology. So first, so we know that they're circular, so they can have several sizes. There are first the M circular, so the threaded size, that can go from M5 to M58. There's also 7/8 inches size, that is also quite known and broad on the market, and even more with customs. This is a really big market, let's say. But M12, M8 also is big, but M12 is one of the most common size in the industry. There are second parts connected with the special shape of this connector, is the locking time. We said before that it's really important for them to be mated and stay mated, especially. So we having several types. Screw-on, really the basics. The first one, we having a bayonet style or push-pull. There's nowadays more and more quicker, let's say, applications that we can find. And so going a bit more towards what we are at Würth Elektronik are launching this year, our range. So we decided to go with M12 size and the screw-on technology. After this, okay, M12 circular connectors. So you have now a defined diameter. So you cannot have as much pins as you want because you have a defined size, and at some points you won't have enough space to have all those pins. So basically you can have from 3 to 17 pins. Why not more than 17? Then after your pins becomes like really thin, so the current that can go through is becoming lower and lower, and also for creepage and clearance reason, at some points the distance between your pins is too small. And so going with M12. And yeah, this year at Würth Elektronik, we will launch 3 polarities that are polarities 4, 5, and 8. So we've seen the size, we've seen the locking system, we've seen the polarity, and last thing that is really important for circular connectors is the coding. So here you have a few examples of coding. First of all, what is the purpose of coding? Coding prevents you from incorrect mating. Sure, as they're circular, you can plug them in. You could plug them in any direction if there wasn't any coding. So that's why it's helpful to have one in order to plug pin 1 with pin 1. But also, this is not only the only thing that coding is made for, because each coding corresponds to one or more application. The coding that you can find the most on the market are coding A, B, and D. They're the oldest one. Coding A is really like a, I would say, core coding. So for analogic signal and power devices, B coding is also toward this direction. From decoding, we're starting to talk a bit more about data that could be used for Ethernet, not high-speed Ethernet, but up to 100 megabytes, so Cat5. Um, Still towards data. There's this not new now, but a coding that came on the market a bit afterwards, that is the X coding, that is really oriented towards high-speed Ethernet. And two other coding that exist, in fact, we can find quite usually also, are the coding S and T with like bigger pins and also a better insulation, let's say. But they're made for power supplies and can pass like higher currents and voltage ranking. And at Würth Elektronik, we are starting with coding A, also basics of basics. This, as I said, is this coding. Oops, sorry. Hopla. This coding is really the most common style of coding that we have on the market. What are they used for? They're really used on the automation industry for all the sensors, actuators, connection, for the field buses connections, and also for DC power. All right. So that was for the, let's say, basics and circular connectors. And we're going to switch now on what we're launching, the product range of in Würth Elektronik. But a short reminder for you, we will talk now about circular connectors, one size, M12, with a coding A, and 3 polarities, 4, 5, and 8. All right. So getting a bit more deeper into the product range. All fine. So let's say that we have 2 big product type, and then that can be divided in six one, let's say. So first of all, there will be the panel mount connectors. I would call them the receptacle. So those connectors will be mounted on enclosure on a panel. It's in the name, but they will be mounted on an enclosure, and they will be fixed, let's say. We have 3 different type technologies for those connectors, and the counterpart for those connectors, I would call them, let's say, the plug, are that you can plug and unplug, are the cable assemblies. So basically, it's a cable, the connector with a cable over molded. There will be also the field attachable. Field attachable, it's only the connector, and you can come with your cable and mount it on the field attachable. So this is a wire to wire connection, and here, at least for PCB, we're having wire to board connections. All right, let's go even a bit deeper into the range. Yeah, something important. I wanted to precise this about the plug receptacle and male female. this doesn't mean the same. This is not like, for example, a USB. A USB, you will have a plug and a receptacle, but no male female. Here you're having male and female. Each plug and each receptacle are available in a male and a female version. So the connector type is independent from gender. Why do we propose this? First, it's basically for you to for allow our customer to have the most design that they need. First, safety reason. Um, the female connector is what we call IP20. It means that you cannot touch the female contact with your finger. You can see it. I don't know if you see my mouse. No, you don't. You can see it on the picture on the right side. The female connector, you cannot touch the contact with your finger because of the insulator. On the opposite, if for the male, you may. So that's why it's, let's say, the norm. It's better to put the female on the side where you have the power, in order for safety reason, in order for the operator or anyone not to get the current, which is better. And also sometimes it depends on the field bus and the protocols, but sometimes they are standards, like female is assigned to master and male is assigned to device. So in order for our customer to have the most geometry that they will need, we have female and male connector independent from this plug and receptacle, so all connectors are available in both gender. All right, so then if we're going back to the panel connectors of the panel receptacle, we have three different mounting style available, either PCB mounting style, so THT connector, connector with solder buckets, where you can come with your own wires and solder them into the solder buckets, or basically the same connector, solder plus wire, where the wires are already soldered on the connector. So first of all, PCB connector. They're available in metal or plastic version. We can have also straight or angled version, so vertical or right angled version in plastic and in metal, both. There's also several threads available. These threads, so it's always, the mating thread is always M12, but this thread allows you to have different panel cuts. So this is the thread of where you're gonna mount your connector on the panel. So several threads are available for spacing reason, or I don't know if it's a place that you want to replace. You already have like a hole in your enclosure, so that's why it allows more designs. Second type that we have after the PCB connectors, we have a solder bucket connectors, also available in metal or in plastic. Something that is changing that we couldn't have with PCB connector is having a front or rear nut, as you can see here. Why so? Front and rear nuts both are available, and it allows two mounting style. First, if you have a front fasten nut, it allows you to have a rear mounting, so you're coming from inside of your enclosure and fastening your nut from the outside. And if you have a rear fasten nut, it's basically the opposite, coming from the outside with your connector and fastening it from the inside. Basically, it's for you to have the most easiest design to be able to mount it in your enclosure. What is the more practical? And also, as for PCB connectors, there are several threads that are available. M12, PG9, and M16 also. Last but not least, on the panel connector receptacle, it's the panel plus wires. They are delivered with 50 centimeters of wires, also available in plastic or metal version, with a front or rear nut. Obviously, for PCB connectors, you cannot have front and rear nuts because if you solder your connector on a PCB and you want to mount it like front mount, so with a rear nut, you will have maybe an issue because your PCB, I don't think that it will fit through the hole. That's why we only have this solution with wire to wire solution, so solder bucket and panel plus wire, because it's easier to make them go through the hole, of course. Okay, I kind of really like this nice cut view of the connectors that we have here. And here in this medium green are highlighted all that is really important for this type of connector. It is the sealing element. Because for panel collectors, sealing is really the key, as they have to work in a harsh environment as they're IP rated. So what is really important here, we have a female connector, just for you to know. So we have a mating O-ring here in silicone that is going to ensure the sealing between this part and the counterpart that will be coming from the left hand side and will be when they will be mated. This O-ring here, the mating O-ring, will do the sealing. Another important O-ring here is the panel O-ring that is here. So the panel is always mounted between the panel nut and the panel O-ring, and this O-ring here is ensuring the good sealing of inside your enclosure. So here inside, on the left your outside. So this is ensuring that your enclosure stay um, let's say dry. And last but not least, the epoxy resin here that ensure you the stability of all the assembly and also the good sealing of a connector. So that's the basics, and this is for an example for the other connector that we have. So this is an angled version, metal, with here what is a bit new, let's say, is here that we have a shielding pin here. Um, and basically, otherwise, what is really also nice to see is that each time you're having a screw connection, you're having a sealing element. We can see that also here. Here you have a thread. Here you will have sealing element. Here you have a thread. Here you have an O-ring. Each time to ensure that you have good sealing and good connection. Also, some fact that is also important on the angled version, we see here that we have pin holders with a retention peg in order to maintain correctly the connector on the PCB while the soldering process. All right. Regarding specifications, they are ruled by an EIC, so they're quite standard. Here, current rating 5 amps for 4 and polarity 4 and 5, 2 amps for polarity 8, voltage rating for 250 to 30 volts. Why so? 4 pins. Again, you have a fixed diameter, so 4 pins and 8 pins. Eight pins. Sorry, the pins are way closer. So for creepage and clearance reason, you cannot have such a high voltage rating. Otherwise, you have a risk to have current arc. Also for current rating, we'll see that also in the end. But the pins for 4 and 5, they're a bit bigger than the pins for 8, also for space reason. So that's why you can have higher current can go through the pins. Contact resistance values here 10 milliohms, and the rise should be less than 15 milliohms. And what is also important is here the IP rating when they're mated is IP68. All right, second type that we have. So this is the cable assembly. So those are counterparts for the first one that I presented you. So the panel receptacle, also available with a metal or plastic nut in order to mate with metal or plastic receptacle, so panel connectors. We're having straight or angled version in order to be able to respond to all geometries. Yeah, they are delivered with 2 meter long cable. And there are two shielded reference available also. Just for you to see them a bit more. So basically we have a connector with the cable that is soldered at the bottom of a connector, and then there's an overmolding in TPU on top of that, that is basically sealing and connecting the connector with all the cable in which have a PVC jack. Regarding the specification, electrical specification, as I said, it's ruled by a standard, so they're basically the same. Also, they're able to mate, so they have the same electrical specification. What is a bit different is here that we have, let's say only, we have, they are IP67 rated and not IP68. I'll also explain what it means, but sadly, because of the overmolding process, we are not able to guarantee an IP68 um, IP rating degree, let's say. Last type that we do have is the field attachable. So field attachable, as I told you, they're also a plug, like a counterpart for the panel receptacle, and they can be mounted on a cable, sorry. So we're having first a version with solder buckets, available in metal, with a metal or a plastic nut, like here. So you, here's basically just the connector, and how does it work? You're coming from the left here inside with your cable, so unmounting here the body nut, all of this light blue part, and all the rest on the left. And basically your cable is going all through all the parts. You solder them. You Of course, you're stripping your wires, stripping your cable, you solder your wire in the solder bucket, and then you can come with all the elements and screw them all here in order to have your cable inside it and to have a good sealing. Here again, each time you're having a thread, like a screw connection, you're having sealing element here, seals. And here you have also an O-ring with this thread, with a body O-ring. So each time we're having sealing elements, each time there's, let's say, a risk that our enclosure won't be waterproof or dustproof. So that's really the key to the good sealing. A second type of field attachable that we have is the field attachable screw in. So basically it's a bit like the basics TBL when you have the cages and you're coming with your screwdriver and you screw in order to maintain the cable inside the cage. We have straight and angle version available also. So here you see basically the end is the same principle. So you coming with your cable, with your sealing nuts, the seals and the clip. But it's basically the assembly method that is a bit different, because instead of having solder brackets, you're having the screw-in pins where you're coming with your wire inside the tiny cages in the pin, and you screw the screws in order to maintain the wire inside it. Regarding specification, again, electrical specification are the same. The solder type is IP68, and the screwing type is IP67. And now, you know all the range. It was a bit dense, maybe, but I want to do some technical focus on a few aspects. It will be quite fast, but what we're talking a lot about, the IP rating, which is really important, because those connectors are made to work in such harsh environments. So as I said, our connector are either IP67 or IP68. So first of all, the six refers to the capacity of protection against solid object, and the 6 is the highest number, and it means that our connector are dust tight. And then the second number, dust tight, means, for example, for the test, it's a test that is pressurized with like the size of the dust is really calibrated and so on. So connectors are dust tight, dust proof, they resist to dust. And second characteristical number is either 7 or 8, so it's the protection against water. So IP67 means that the connector are protected against immersion up to 1 meter depth during 30 minutes. And the 8, it's kind of not the same, but it's also immersion of 1 meter or more for a longer period of time. And this has to be defined by manufacturer. And in our case, our IP68, so X8, means that they are protected against the immersion under 1 meter of water, but instead of 30 minutes, during 24 hours. So that was a point on the IP rating. A tiny thing on the pin design, because I wanted to show you the specific design for the field attachable screw-in parts that is really nice. Pins are CNC machined. All our connectors have gold plated pins, except for this ones, which is only nickel, because it wouldn't make any sense to have like gold cages, let's say. And my last slide, as I told you regarding the current specification for polarity 4 and 5, we have 5 amps current, and for 8 we have 2 amps. And this is here the reason, because here we have only 1 millimeter diameter, and here 0.8. And also a point that is important regarding the contact material. Male contact are in brass and female in phosphor bronze. Why so? It's because phosphor bronze is a copper alloy that is way more flexible. And you can see from the shape of a female contact that it will need to, let's say, open and close a bit more to be much more flexible in order to for the male pin to insert and go away more easily. That's why we chose those copper alloys. Also, last point that is really important is the tightening torques. To ensure the good sealing, we need to be able to have a proper tightening torques. Otherwise, the O-ring will be too squished or not enough. There's too much space. Then we won't be able to ensure the good sealing. All right. In order to conclude, circular connectors are a great solution for all the applications that requires the connectors to work in harsh environment and harsh condition. There are a lot of different sizes of connectors of locking style. There's really an infinite world of circular connectors. Several polarities are available depending on size of connectors, of course, for creepage and clearance reason, and also space reason simply. Coding is really important, and it must be chosen depending on your application. Würth Elektronik is launching this year M12 connectors with coding A and 3 polarities that are 4, 5, and 8. These connectors are specially adequate for all of that is sensor actuator connection, field buses, a lot in the automation industry also, and DC power. So that was it. Sorry, I had to hurry a tiny bit at the end. I was a tiny bit late, but I hope you learned some stuff, that you enjoyed the presentation, and thank you very much for your attention. Good. Now I will check your questions.
Thanks a lot to you, Caroline, for your interesting presentation. As you already mentioned, you can now enter your questions
Yeah.
when you have one.
Mhm.
There's a first question. When can we expect the launch of these products you mentioned in your presentation?
Yeah. So, as you know, uh, climate is a bit tense with raw material shortage and so on. So we're doing our best to be able to supply this product as much as we can. But so by Q3 this year, so let's say from July, we will be able at least to start our ADM to start providing you samples and documentation on them.
Sounds
Um,
good. And
yeah.
are these products UL certificated?
So we are currently finishing the UL certification. So they will be UL certified, not the cable part, but the other connector will be UL certified with a specialized UL. So this is UL 2238, which is we really wanted um, sorry to certify them with this UL. Usually, a lot of our connectors are certified with UL 1977. Um, but this time we wanted to certify them with this one, as this UL is way stricter, and as this connector um, will be working in harsh environments. So we thought that it was really interesting and better to provide a better quality service by certifying this connector with the UL 2238. So yeah, there will be except cable assemblies.
Okay, cool. Thanks a lot for the explanation. Another questions, are the products halogen free?
Um, the product aren't halogen free. Why so? Because we first of all, as I mentioned, the cable assemblies, the cable jacket is in PVC first of all, so this is not the best when you have chlorine inside it. But also in some we having PVC, we having some also some um, not halogen free housing, flame retardant in some housings. That's why we cannot have halogen free products on this range.
Okay, thanks. And what about glow wire? Are the products glow wire?
Um, They also aren't glow wire, even if we did some extra material tests. On the material, of course, on the yellow card and so on, all the glow wire tests were done and were approved, but the product themselves aren't glow wire certified. It doesn't mean that they cannot stand a test. It's just because also for the application that we have for these connectors, usually glow wires are requested in white goods applications, so also consumer application, and for all the application that this connector will do, such as industry, communication, being outside, and so on, glow wire is usually not required. That's why we decided to not to perform glow wire tests on these connectors.
Okay, thanks. Another questions,
Mhm.
are angled M12 connectors also planned for the circuit board?
Yeah, if you mean for PCB, yeah, so we have for PCB connectors, so panel PCB connectors, we having, as I said, straight version and angle version, both available in plastic and metal. So yeah, PCB connectors, you can find them right angled and straight.
Great. Thanks a lot, Caroline. I would say if there are any questions left, we will answer them via email afterwards. But for now,
Right.
thank you very much for your attention. And I hope you enjoyed our presentation. And I hope you enjoyed our first day of the digital days. The next presentation will be tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. The title is Making Your Signal Transmission with the WEURMF product range, quick and small in your design. The speaker will be Jason Chung, so hopefully see you tomorrow and have a nice day. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.